Hi, welcome to the Atomos booth at NAB 2014 for our next part of our newsshooter.com show in association with Todec. I'm joined by
David Toby
from
Datacolor.
and Jeremy Young from
Atomos.
Say that again?
Yeah, Jeremy from Atomos.
Which is it's pretty obvious with the Atomos booth. Okay, so why have Datacolor and Atomos come together? What's going on? Jeremy, can you explain roughly what's going on here?
Yeah, so actually we had an issue with our screens in the factory, and they were a little bit warm, they were a little bit blue, a bit cool, and we needed to calibrate them. So we bought a Datacolor unit and we wrote some calibration software. About a week later, I went to Infocom, and Datacolor's business development manager was walking around. He saw our screens and said, "Do you guys need any calibration?" And I said, "Funny you should ask. We just did a calibration software ourselves at the factory, but it wasn't ready for customers." So we started to discuss the opportunity, and Datacolor wanted to come to the video market because you've been very popular in the photography space.
Yes, exactly. There's very well-known color management standards for computer monitors that give us a lot of leeway, and we've been doing that for many years. But it's much more difficult to do reference displays and to do field displays in particular, because the controls that you might have with a computer just aren't there. So the opportunity to work with the manufacturer and put the controls inside the device makes it not just more powerful, but it makes it much easier for the end user, because they're not having to tune things and tweak around with things. It just happens on the EEPROM in the device.
And from our perspective, our customers are struggling with drifting LCDs all the time when they're setting up their shots in the field.
Can you tell me, why do LCDs actually drift? What happens to the color? And is this a normal thing?
Yeah, it's a normal thing. LCDs especially. It's basically as the chemicals inside drift over time, as they change their state, then they move away from the Rec 709 color space, which means when you're then setting up your white balance or adjusting your gamma curves, etc. for the screen, you never know really where you are, and then in the end you have to do all that in post-production. So our concept was work with Datacolor, allow our screen to be calibrated on the fly in the field using a computer, so then the user will know that they're always in the Rec 709 color space. But what that allowed us to do was adjust colors for different gamut curves coming from the sensor of the camera, like Canon log or Sony log.
Yeah, because it doesn't really matter if you're working in Rec 2020, you still need to see it in Rec 709 on screen. So that's kind of the universal gamma curve, the universal color space that you need to check things on site to. And by having a display that has Rec 709 primaries, and by having the calibration functions that are going to neutralize the grays, make sure the correct gamma curve is on there, then you have effectively a reference display in the field that you can use for more than just seeing whether the person's head is in the frame. You can see whether the highlight on their forehead is too bright, or the shadows are too dark, or their skin tone is not acceptable the way it's lit. So there are all sorts of advantages to having accurate color at the source on site as you're working to eliminate issues further down the road.
Yeah, and what that does is save time in post-production, and that's what we're all about, is better quality recordings and less time trying to mess around with non-creative parts of the production process. And this is one of them. If your colors aren't right, you've got to normalize those colors, get them all right before you can be creative. So we're trying to stop that and have it be just that right at the end of the shoot, right at the end of the production, all your colors are right, and now you're just being creative for your customer.
Okay, can we see how this actually works on a unit?
Yes, we can. So first of all, I'll just show. So,
sorry, this is it. This is a Datacolor Atomos
correct.
calibrator.
So it's their hardware and our software to obviously work with our unit. So this is the unit, and you get a couple of things in the box. You get that, and David, I'll give you that for a second. And you get, this is the very important part, which is the Atomos part, USB to serial, which is our Lank connector. So you plug this into the Samurai or the Ninja Blade, and on the Shogun will have exactly the same functionality. And then you open up your Atomos software, which is sitting here on the screen.
Let's have a look at that. So what have you got? Guys, move out of the way a second. Jeremy, come over and tell us what you got.
So what you have here is we've detected the blade because this cable is plugged into it. The spider is also plugged in, so both have been detected. And then all we need to do is hit calibrate. Can you just hit the calibrate button there for me? Hit calibrate.
So, sorry, over there somewhere is a
Is it a samurai?
let's just go and have a look.
Yeah,
So
let's
what
go
have we
look.
got over here?
So this is what we have. So we just hit calibrate, and right now it's the data color spider needs to be sitting exactly on the screen, and it'll go through the full color sweep, check what the LCD is doing, give us a reference back to our software, and then we upload an ICM file or a file for the color space of the screen, and then recalibrate the screen.
And so it's currently cycling through colours. Matt, can you see this?
Yeah, it's currently cycling through the full color spectrum, which is what data colors hardware needs in order to give us a reference that we can use to then calibrate the monitor.
And how long does this entire process take?
Takes about 1.5 to 2 minutes. It's not long.
Okay, so once you've done that, or are we gonna?
Yeah,
it's still going, right?
You'll see that. So once we'll let that go, but once you've done that, you get a curve of what the spider told us, what the actual colours were, where the reference colours were, and you'll see that a curve will come up here. And then once you've done that, the screen is calibrated. So our theory is, on the fly, you can, in the field, whether you're inside, outside, no matter where you are, you can calibrate your screen. And how that calibration occurs from the spider unit side, I'll let David explain.
Well, the spider is a 7-channel colorimeter, so that's really more like a spectrophotometer. You're getting 7 bands across the spectrum that you're able to measure, and that gives you very good information to use to determine what the colors that you're seeing are, so that there's a real connection between what Atomos can do inside their device and what we can provide them from the outside. I mean, our companies have a great deal in common. Our goal is to provide you affordable equipment that makes your job easier, more productive, and more consistent. And so it's just a natural situation to take an affordable colorimeter and attach it to an affordable screen and provide you with the tools you need to do.
When you say affordable, there's something else that you guys do, which I was quite interested in. If you buy the Atomos version of the data column spider, or whatever you call it, thing.
Yeah.
What do you call it? A calibrator,
Yeah, calibrator.
thing.
Yeah.
You can actually add calibration software for your computer.
Yeah, you can do this either way. If you own a data color spider, you can buy the connection cable from Atomos and use it with their displays.
Which is that's $50. So very cheap. They've already bought a data color spider unit, which we include in the box in any case. So if they don't have one, they can just buy our one.
Right.
And if they already have one, then they can just buy our cable.
Yeah, so the other option here, of course, is to buy your spider from Atomos at the same time you buy your display, so that you can get it bundled that way, in which case you'd need to reverse that and buy a component from us to have all the options. In other words, you'd buy a software upgrade from Datacolor to use with your Atomos spider.
Can that same spider do other things? I mean, you also do home cinema, theater application stuff?
Oh, indeed. What we're announcing at this show, we don't have quite as many new products as Atomos does, but what we're announcing at this show is a Spider HD bundle, which is the first software that calibrates not only computer displays, but video reference displays and field displays, all with the same software. And there are other tools in that box. But I'd like to point out that the time it takes to calibrate an Atomos Spider display combination is, as he says, a moment with no real user involvement. If you would like to calibrate some other brand that does not have that internal function, you're going to have fewer controls, and it's going to take you 20 to 30 minutes to do it. So there's
Wow, so there's a big time saving there. Okay, so this is it. This is calibration complete?
Yeah, calibration is complete, and you can see that we've got 3 bands here of the different color references that show you where we were.
We would think the screen has just gone out. Okay, it's come
Okay,
back.
that show you where we were. If we can hit next now, can you hit next there? So, okay, the calibration is complete. Go next down here. And this gives you the color temperatures in the different grays and where we have, what the spiders read us and where we've put them and the differences. So that gives you some reference. And if you watch these over time, then you'll see how your screen's performing. And we can actually use that data in our support if we're getting drifting of colors that are.
Okay, great.
I'd like to point out how very close those numbers are. I mean, 200 or 300K is a minute amount, and we're talking about 10 or 20K here as the variation. So that's very, very clean.
Yeah, and that's one of the things is we calibrate before at the factory, and then the customer gets to calibrate along the way. So once you keep it in, then you always know where you are, and your screen isn't drifting big amounts. But if we left that for a year and then calibrated it, these numbers would be very different.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. Thank you very much for coming on. Jeremy, stay with us. I think we're going to talk a little bit about some of your other products,
Yes.
but thanks for showing us this Spider. Okay, next up on the show is Clinton Hahn. We're going to go straight into that now. Clinton is a well-known cinematographer, DP, working in Australia, and he's been working very closely with Atomos on some of the latest products. Clinton, welcome.
Hey, Dan.
Clinton's also one of the new shooter team. You'll probably recognise him from some of the videos. Thanks for joining our volunteer
pleasure.
squad of shooters.
Pleasure.
Okay, and Jeremy. Jeremy is going to come back in and talk to us. Sorry, Jeremy, come back.
No, I'm back.
You met this guy before? Never
I have.
seen him, right?
I have. He's on the back of our booth. Got a big picture of him.
Okay, so why do you use an Atomos product?
Well, basically, before we started the feature, director basically said, look, we want proxies, like HD proxies. So I was I was already using the Samurais and all the Atomos stuff, and it just suddenly occurred to me that the best workflow would be just to put essentially a Samurai blade on it because we're recording via the RED. So that allowed us to essentially record HD proxies simultaneously with the 4K RAW internally in the camera. And what that allowed us to do as well was to give all the rushes and dailies to the director for him to essentially view that in, like I said, standard HD or HD.
And in real time, you just
Yeah,
gave
real
him the
time,
disc.
exactly.
And did
Yeah.
you use the file naming from the RED?
Absolutely.
Actually, you know what?
Absolutely.
So there's actually a red over there with a,
Yeah.
with a black. Can we go and go take a look at it?
Sure.
Follow me. Mind yourself on the stage there, Matt. It's okay. He's done this before. Okay. So what we have here.
Yeah, so
What?
Jeremy can show
Hang on.
So Jeremy can show you
Jeremy,
basically
stand
how
yourself around.
the file naming system works in there, in which you basically will set up the RED with the blade itself. What that does is it gives you also the file name so that you can then later link your proxies to your original source files in 4K.
Yeah. So in our on the main page, you just go into menu and it's got file naming, very simple, as we usually do. And here we've got the source as RED 1 or Epic, and we've got an Epic here. This gives you the file name that is exactly being used on the 4K RAW files from the Epic, and I can change that to our normal scene shot take, which is what everyone else uses if there's no file naming come across. But this is what you want if you're going to do exactly what Clinton did, and use this as your HD offline recording, as proxies as they like to call them, and then you can give those to your directors. And once you're there, and then I can hit record on here and trigger from the camera, and we're all good, lined up and synced.
Yep.
So what do you do with your proxies? How do you use them in your workflow?
Well, like I said, primarily it's something that we can use to cut. So we cut the whole. Well, basically, all the scenes can be cut using the proxies, and then we link it straight to the 4K files internally. But
And what stage of the edit do you actually link it? Just before export to?
No, primarily through the whole post-production stage. I want to quickly add that the blade is also very useful because we've also been using it as a monitor because the resolution of the screen has vastly improved. I've been actually using it also on my Steadicam simultaneously. So this allows us to actually record all the stuff simultaneously on a Steadicam sled, and I use the blade as my monitor as well.
Okay, sorry, I'm just going to rewind so people are clear.
Yeah.
At what point do you swap out the proxies from the blade
for the 4K
for the
raw.
4K?
Swap out the. Okay, what do you mean, like as in how?
No, in your edit,
Yeah.
when do you actually change? You're obviously editing in a proxy.
Yep.
At some point, you flip that to the 4K raw.
Yes,
or
yes. After everything's cut. So at this stage, everything's just been sent to the director, and once we're ready to cut the whole film, that's when we actually link it.
And so do you do the cuts on the ProRes files, or do you do the cuts
We do
on
the cuts on the ProRes
Yes,
files,
okay.
and then we link it to the
Yeah,
4K
because
files.
it's
Yes.
very cumbersome in
Yes,
the raw files,
exactly.
and also
Yeah.
they're raw, and
Yeah.
you haven't color graded them yet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
ProRes is obviously clearer, and you can see it more on the screen. So then,
And Jeremy, I'm going to ask you this. So that's the red workflow.
Yes.
As we move into 4K land, if we go into F55s and sort of Panasonics and whatever else, it would be nice
Yeah.
to be able to do that same sort of thing. To be able to cut in HD using a ProRes file and then swap it out just before you go to your grade. How close to being to a reality is that at the moment?
well, I think we made a couple of announcements here Panasonic putting our ProRes core into their VeriCam 4K camera, the HD version in 444. So they're already going to do that internally for that camera, so you will get that functionality. I'm not sure whether they're going to be able to record both simultaneously, so then you probably will need a Samurai or something on the back of it. But our relationship is very strong with them, so I don't see any reason why we can't implement that. And Panasonic has, as does Sony, and I'll get to Sony in a second, but Panasonic has some great technology in that area, metadata being passed over SDI, just like we've managed to implement with the Red. Now, Sony is a different story. The F5, F55 division is less open. And they've got their own RAW recorder. They don't seem to really want to deliver those kind of things to the customer.
So at the moment, you have to manually, you can record, obviously you can record it.
And the time code's the same. So if you're using free run time code, you know what the time code was. So you can definitely match it up, but it's not as elegant as being able to link the files like we're doing here on the Red. It's much better.
Okay, great. Clinton, thank you so much for your time. Next up, we're going to look at some Canon gear. Oh, it's a bit messy here on stage. And we have Tim Cook from Canon, who just magically, Tim Cook. Tim Cook from Apple. No, Tim Smith.
My net worth.
Yes, your net worth has gone up. Tim Smith from Canon, who's going to show us a little bit about how you've got the. What's this? A blade or?
It's a blade.
It's a blade hooked up to a C300. Is that right?
This is C300. Yeah. And what I want to show you, and the reason Canon's on here, from my perspective, is we have this function. It's locked. Let me unlock that. We have this function in display options. You go screen adjust down here, and that references to the calibration that we just did with data color up on the stage. So if we touch that, you can see right here I've got C-Log and Rec 709. If I change that, I've got Canon log on the camera, and you can see it's kind of washed out. It's not, if you want to set up your shot, it's not ideal, and this is what people have been struggling with in the real world on a Rec 709 monitor that can't be changed. But because we have control over the gamut of the screen, we can then apply the same LUT, and now I'm actually looking at a normal picture, even though I'm being sent C-Log, Canon log. Now I can adjust my exposure and my and do all of my normal color exposure accurately.
Great.
So this has been very popular with customers of the C300 and the C100, and we have the same function on the Ninja Blade, which is over HDMI, which also has the start, stop, and timecode trigger. So the integration is getting pretty tight now.
What's really great for us, what I'm finding, is ProRes. You know, the demand for ProRes recording out of the 500 or even 300 is huge for television work. And I'm not getting ProRes in a lot of recorders. You know, it adds another step. There's a comfort level to ProRes. I mean, I know ProRes came out years ago as sort of a proxy file, but that's become the de facto standard for production. And doing ProRes at this price point, it's fantastic. Fantastic.
Can you talk a little bit more about the advantages of, as you see it, this system? I'm going to ask you, Tim, because it's your system. I mean, C300, incredibly popular, but when you have it configured like this, it's actually not that big or cumbersome, right?
No, actually, I mean, it's a very small footprint, and obviously that's what they want. We built the camera to be a small footprint, and unless you get into the 4K world, although in your case it's not that big, you end up with a bigger footprint in 4K, and it's not. The story sometimes dictates a small footprint camera. I mean, we built a 5-pound camera, and then we turned it into a 20-pound camera to make it 4K, and that just takes away from the advantages of the small camera. So if you can have a small recorder that's doing double duty as a larger viewfinder and all those kind of things, make that small printer, it really works great.
Yeah, I mean, it is actually true. You can take the C300. I mean, we're running a C300. This is a C300 here. You know, it's actually a pretty large
configuration.
I wish I could show you. We can't show you. It's a very large footprint, but you can scale that camera from being really tiny in your hand. You know, with a
actually, that's not that large. I mean, that's a really respectable, reasonable footprint for what you're shooting now. But really, that 2-shot over the back seat into the front seat of a car, getting into small places, you shoot indie film, you shoot bigger films, you don't have room. I mean, I've been on a lot of films where you want to grab a shot and you just want to pick up big films that where they have budget and money, but it's a matter of just physically getting something where it has to be, and it lets the cinematographers think differently about where they can set up shots and how they set up shots. Having something this small, I mean, this is a huge zoom that you've got on here, and this is a good size finder. It's a recorder, but it's also a good size finder. And you're ready to go. Nobody really uses this for anything. So
yeah, I have to ask you about that because it isn't. This is not the greatest EVF on the planet.
No.
So thankfully, there are people out there making devices like.
It depends on really what you're shooting, but it's not. We do have people in the doc world or in the wedding world that do. That's where it should be for them. But in traditional television or filmmaking, no, that's not what you want. You need this. So, and that's
I have to say, so the one thing that Canon have done lately is announce that the dual pixel AF system, which is originally on the 70D, then the C100 is coming to this camera, right?
To the 300, yeah. So you'll be able to take your existing 300s, it's about $500, get it into Canon. They'll do, it's a hardware firmware mod that'll give you the autofocus capabilities of 70D in a 300. So the 100 will start shipping with it built in. For about $500 more. It's going to come either way, with or without it. You can choose. You can either have your old 100s modified or buy it with that situation already, or you can send in your 300s and have those modified. So, autofocus will also play a role depending on the type of things you're shooting. I mean, he's not autofocusing here, but
he could be. In fact, I mean,
this interview might work if it was available.
I've got a C100 rather with the upgrade. Had it done 2 weeks ago, and actually it's been amazing. And I have been able to just start using the little EVF again for some things.
I think over the years we've talked about autofocus, and I've never been a fan of it. And you've not been a fan of it. We've had this conversation only because it never really worked, and this one works.
Yeah.
I was the hardest sell of anybody at Canon to say autofocus would be a good thing on a camera, but if it works and it doesn't.
For certain things.
For certain things, right? But it ramps down slowly. It doesn't bang in. It's a very intuitive type of autofocus system, where what we've seen in the past is just autofocus, and autofocus based on getting a still shot, where it hits the focus, you take the picture, it steps off. Well, video doesn't work that way, and this autofocus is feathered in. It looks nice. It looks like
when will the C300 version be available, the upgrade?
When we'll be able to start sending them in, it is shortly, but I don't actually have the date, but shortly. Over the summer, absolutely over the summer, so soon.
And are we going to see this technology on every C series camera from now on, or?
I don't know, actually. We haven't had that conversation. It's a little bit different on the 500, even though they look like they're the same camera. It's a hardware and firmware mod for the existing cameras. So right now we've got a huge amount of 300s in the marketplace, and we've got to take care of those first, actually, because there's all chips to change and things like that in there. So, it could happen. It could happen. As long as the autofocusing function of the camera doesn't change the manual capabilities, then I think it's a great feature to have in the camera.
Yeah. And I think what's really great is you can get a little setup. You can get rid of all of this. When you're running AF, you can just have the body. You can just pop one of these little ninjas on the top, and you can kind of run it a bit like a Hasselblad. You can kind of run it down with a screen about here. Again, not for every kind of thing, but for a bit of dock shooting, you'd be jumping in and out of the car. So I went to a Canon dinner last night where the Vice guys, the Vice on HBO guys are there, and they throw these things in and out.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about on the small footprint, being able to just jump in and out. I mean, I could be sitting on the seat next to me and I can be out of the car in 10 seconds. The rig he's using on his shoulder is practical for this environment, but he would never get out in time. Or he'd clip it, or he'd bang it, or he'd hit his head. This is just in and out.
I think the form factor that we're discussing, that being able to move things around, if you try and put too much inside the camera, like you want to do 4K recording, you want to do everything that you can think of, then the camera gets big. This is what an Arri is. This is what a Sony F65 is. They're big cameras, and I really like the fact that on our new Shogun, the RAW coming from the 500, we can record that in 4K.
Hang on, wait. I didn't know this. So the Shogun can record C500 RAW? Is that right? It turns RAW to ProRes, or is it
just RAW? We're keeping the RAW workflow, so we want to make sure that customers who want RAW, which is this percentage, it's not a huge percentage of people. Some guys are toying with it, but it is obviously very cumbersome. Most people are going to record ProRes, but we've had the C500 RAW spec for a while now, and we had to wait until we had a product that we could put it in.
So when are we going to see the Shogun come out?
So the Shogun is, I'm saying end of Q3, which is September timeframe. And one of the reasons that we don't like announcing early, but But when you've got these great cameras coming out, and they contact you and say, we need your 4K recorder on top, then we'd love to promote at this show and let everyone know what we're doing.
So I know this is an interview, so I don't want to jump it. So you're recording the RMF file to the Shogun, but not debarring it.
No, not debaying it.
That's fantastic. I didn't know that. That's fantastic. Yeah, they're inexpensive.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, in some
Are you
cases
learning this now for the first time?
Yes.
I didn't know it. No, I mean that.
We only announced it yesterday, so I don't
honestly,
expect everyone to know.
That price point, that's what the media for other recorders cost, not the
Yeah, and our
recorder.
media will be 2 terabytes, two 1 terabyte drives rated
Yeah.
at $60 each drive, so $120 for 2.5 hours of 4K ProRes, and I think it's about an hour 10 of your raw files. Because I think
that's fantastic.
you guys are about 3 times the size of the ProRes.
What about frame rates?
Frame rates are we'll only do up to 30p.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. Excellent.
So 24, 25, and 30.
Oh, yeah, you got to get that. I mean, I know you don't like to announce early, but you should ship early.
Yeah,
So-
yeah.
so-
Ship that out.
Okay, on that happy note, gentlemen, thank you very much. All it remains for me to say is thank you for everybody here on the Atomos booth, and join us again tomorrow back at the Teradek booth.